Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Irfan Hussain, and we are here today with another lecture on literature of war and conflict. War literature is not a new genre of literature. It has been always written since ancient times. War literature is one of the oldest forms of storytelling. It reveals the human experience of war beyond history and statistics. It shows emotions, trauma, courage, and moral struggles. You see, almost the same experiences, same emotions, and same feelings have been flowing with the time since ancient times today. Why do we write about war? What do we need? What is our need to write about war? It is to glorify heroes and memorize sacrifices. One thing, to glorify heroes, why the heroes are glorified, to give a kind of inspiration to the new generation so they can follow the footsteps of the heroes. These heroes are glorified, they are honored, they are given the military medals and titles. That is all to inspire the new generation to keep on moving on their destination, on their path towards their destination or goal of their country or their nation. And the other thing, to process trauma and psychological pain. War is no more romanticized now, and it has not been romanticized in the real in the real world. You can say war creates trauma. It creates psychological pain along with the physical pain, physical damage, and this literature explains it. Then to protest against war and expose its horrors. We have not seen any war. Even the time we are going through various wars like Afghan Pakistan war or Iran America war, but we are far away from the war. We are just looking all these things on the television, on social media. We have not personally experienced all these things. So literature tells what is the actual destruction of the war. As you will read the Rainy River or other short stories and poems in your paper War and Conflict, and you'll see the psychological traumas, the pains, the loss, the sense of losing homes and family. All these things are elaborated, given, described in the literature so that the common people know what is the actual destruction of the war and to preserve memory and witness history. As you are now witnessing history, and you can write some essay, you can write some short story, you can write some drama on the present situation, whatever is happening in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and what is happening in Iran, Iraq, in their war against Israel and America. War literature and human experience, as already I have explained it, that literature shows what war feels like. It is very different to see or watch the war on media. We enjoy, rather, as a Pakistani nation, we know that we enjoy these things, that missiles are being fired and we are enjoying, we are raising slogans. But what is the actual feel of the war? That is very different. And literature is to be felt. War literature is written to be felt. It explores fears, courage, loss, and survival. It includes stories of soldiers and civilians, as you will read in your paper. A few examples of classical literature: War, Iliad by Homer, Aeneid by Virgil, and his stories by Herodotus. Herodotus was not a novelist or dramatist or poet. He was a historian, and he wrote this book, the stories, that was, in fact, a collection of various wars, especially the wars of Greece and Persian wars. And he explained all the destructions and all the implications of the war in his book. And that Herodotus is one of the uh, very reliable sources of history. We read the history of Babylon, Rome, and ancient Egypt from the books of Herodotus. And Beowulf, we know that it is a kind of imaginary war that is an epic national poem of England. And being the students of literature, you all have the introduction to Beowulf that is anonymous. No one knows who wrote it. Classical era, that was about the heroic ideals that focused on honor, glory, and heroism. As we read Aeschylus and we read Thespis, we read Euripides, and we read Oedipus as well. Sorry, Sophocles as well, and we read various about the various heroes. If you have gone through literature of Greece, you might have read about these heroes. So gods influences these battles. That was very common because these wars were written in the system that was the mythological system and the system of mythology, a system of gods and goddesses. And these gods and goddesses were always involved in the human affairs. Dying bravely, seen as the highest honor. This is one of a very unique phenomena that, for example, the Spartans were trained throughout their lives. They were given very hard life, very hard exercise, and used to become very strong men. And they used to become a very strong, very powerful, just for only for one war. They had the war games. They used to had duels, and one is to be killed. So all the lifetime effort used to be ended in only one combat. Dying bravely seen as the highest honor. That was an honor to die in the arena instead of dying outside arena or instead of dying a death of a common man. And glorification of death. That is the biggest thing that is used to motivate by the religions, by the nations, by the various agencies, that is glorified, and it is glorified to such magnitude that the followers love to be died, love to be murdered, love to be martyred in the battlefield. World War One, a turning point. It was a war that not only turned uh, the the direction of the world, but also it introduced a lot of new things in the warfare. Industrial warfare introduced machine guns and poison gas, and trench warfare caused massive casualties, and the heroic image of war collapsed. That was the conclusion. That all the romance of the war, or the romance that was attached with the wars, collapsed, and people actually came to know what to it is the devastation and destruction of the war. War literature, World War One, and as World War One it influenced each and everything, it influenced literature as well. So there are a few names that I have picked to give you the examples of the literature of war. One of the very famous novels of World War One, All Quiet on the Western Front by Eric Maria Remarque. The next is Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway inculcates his own experience of World War One when he uh, drove ambulance through the war and carried injured and dead in his ambulance. And his novel depicts all that devastation and destruction of the war. The next one is Regeneration by Pat Barker. Again, a wonderful piece of work. Then Three Soldiers by John Dos Passos. That is a story of the three American soldiers who suffered in World War One. Then there are a few poets like Wilfred Owen, Siegfried Saison, Rupert Brooke, and Isaac Rosenberg, and a couple of these poets we will study in our course. And then there came World War II with a big atomic explosion, and it has two significant events. One was the Holocaust that was carried by Hitler, and it is claimed that 3 million Jews were killed in Europe in that Holocaust. And the other one was the atomic explosion, the atomic attack of America on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These were the experiences that could not be inculcated, that could not be represented in the traditional storytelling. So the traditional storytelling struggled to represent such destruction. These events, these experiences demanded, called for new kind of traditions and new kind of innovations in writing literature. There are a couple of works that have been very popular the in World War II, along with many other works, but I'm just giving you reference of a couple of works. And these works had a kind of absurdism in them and a kind of dark comedy. The first one that I picked up is Joseph Heller's Catch 22, a satirical war novel set during World War II. The term Catch 22 refers to a paradoxical rule that traps a person in an impossible situation. Heller shows that war is illogical, chaotic, and meaningless. Again, the demolishing of the concept of romance that had been long associated with war. It is a kind of disillusionment that war is such a kind of romantic thing. Military orders often make no sense, but soldiers must obey them. As we can see right now in situation of Iran and America war, that the soldiers have to kill the innocent people as it happened in Gaza. That there was no logic, there was no wisdom, that there was no even military insight into killing the innocent children. More than 70,000 people were killed in Gaza, and thousands of innocent children were killed as well. And that tells that military orders often makes no sense, but soldiers must obey them. Another example is Kurt Vonnegut Slaughterhouse 5, uh, an example of brutal casualties in the war. The novel describes the firebombing of Dresden in 1945, which killed tens of thousands of civilians. So wars are fought within the military territories or in the capacity of militants. But what happened in the wars when it touches the limits of the frenzies, that it doesn't not make any difference between the soldiers and the civilians, as we have recently seen in uh, Ukraine war, Gaza war, and Iran war, that the schools and hospitals were hit and the civilians were killed brutally in these wars. So Vonnegut presents the war through a blend of realism, science fiction, and dark humor. We understand what is a dark humor. That black comedy or dark comedy or dark humor is somewhat that shows brutality through humor, and humor also is also not pleasant or enjoyable. It is a kind of very bitter thing. The famous poets of World War II were Keith Chagres, Randall Cherwell, Carl Shapiro, and Leon Lewis, along with many others. Vietnam War literature, it also has a significant contribution in the literature of war, and we will study Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried. And these works focus on psychological trauma people suffer through the wars and blurred lines between truth and storytelling. So, what happens here that storytelling and truth go along with each other, and it is sometimes very difficult to distinguish between the truth and the fiction. In contemporary war literature in the recent decades, Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini, a wonderful novel that explains or that has been in fact written in the setting of Afghan-Russian war when Russia invaded Afghanistan and Afghan people suffered a lot because of that invasion. And that invasion was followed by Americans and Pakistani interference. And this novel is wonderful depiction of all these events, and I recommend this novel because more than reports, more than history reading, we can understand this history better through that kind of novels. Another example is Red Employment by Phil Clay, Iraq War, and then again The Breadwinner by Deborah Ellis. That was one again about the Taliban conflict. Core themes of all these war literature, the works in the war literature, the breakdown of language, the concept of enemy. Sometimes enemies are real and sometimes enemies are created. As Iran has been presented as enemy to Middle East, enemy to Europe, enemy to America, and the Democrats of Iran vividly claim that they never meant to hurt anyone and they did not fire a single missile to any country before the war. So enemies are sometimes created and sometimes do exist in reality. A big concept of home front versus battlefield, that is the difference between the cruel battlefield and your homeland. And then camaraderie among soldiers, all these experience has been used as the core themes of literature of war. So war literature explores humanity in extreme situations. War is not something normal. It's not, no, war is not something that can be taken as something common. It is extreme, and sometimes it we can say that it goes beyond extremity. It raises moral questions and develops empathy. Uh, we are now experiencing history. We are now going through the very crucial phase of history that, and we can uh, feel and that there can be raised lot of moral questions, the killing of innocent people in so-called um, the protective wars. So thank you very much for today's listening, for your passion, and hopefully we will come back with some new topic or other continuity of this topic or paper of war and conflict. Thank you very much.